I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Drapedomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is the head Drapedomaniac in charge. And I'm here with my lovely wife, Angela.
What's up?
And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. I told you about when I went down to Atlanta when I was young, when I was like 14, 15. And I was there for about a month. Yeah.
Who were you visiting? Family?
Visiting family down there.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta.
I thought your family was from the country.
But they are. We were in Thomaston. That's like on the outskirts.
Oh.
But anyway, I was there for a month. I was 14, 15. It was summer vacation. And when I got back, I was black. You couldn't tell where my hair started and my head stopped. I was black, and I liked it. I wasn't even conscious then. But I knew that just looked good to me. That darkness and that blackness. And I told you that I was always attracted to like darker skinned women. Well, for our subject today, we're going to be talking about. I guess it's a documentary or a report that Angela and I watched. We watched two different ones, and some of the people, there was some overlap with some of the people that were in it. We thought it was the same one at first, but it was two different ones. And it focused on people in the Philippines who were whitening their skin. And it just started like a whole conversation between us about it. And when I first saw it, I just found it extremely interesting. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I've spoken enough. You can go ahead.
Well, I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen all kinds of documentaries about skin bleaching. Is that the first documentary that you've ever seen about skin bleaching?
I think at the time that I saw that one, it might have been the second or third that I've seen. But for some reason, the one that I saw, a few nights ago, that I just found it really interesting. Well, I told you how intrigued I was by it. I don't know why the other ones didn't strike me that way. Maybe they did, or maybe I was just half watching them. But this one, I was like, what in the world what are they doing? And then as you were pointing out, and as we were both watching, as we watched the show, there were plenty of dark-skinned people around. Well, there were dark-skinned Filipinos running around. And I guess it's kind of the same thing as like if you're watching something that's Korean or from Brazil or whatever, to watch their media, you would think most of the people there were white or light skinned. Yeah.
Now, I've never watched anything, I don't think, from Vietnam or the Philippines. Sorry. But I've watched plenty of stuff from Korea, a good amount of stuff from China, and some things from, like, Indonesia. But I don't think I've ever seen anything from, but I don't know. I might be overlapping and confused about some of those places. No, it was just surprising to me that you were so... that you were kind of so affected by it. I guess maybe because I've watched so many things on colorism. I think that might be one of the first ones that I've seen about Asian people, but it might not be, because I think that there was like a whole movement on Twitter about for Indian women primarily. I think talking about fair Fair and Not Lovely or something, because I think there's a product that was marketed in India called Fair and Lovely or something, and so there was like a social media campaign against it. But I've seen a lot. I thought we watched it together, but it was like in Nigeria. I think it was either Nigeria or Senegal, or maybe I'm conflating two different.
No, we did watch that together. I remember.
Now, what struck me about this one, and I just was wondering if it just reflected the progression of time, and so the advancement. And I say that ironically. I mean, not like I don't mean really advancement, but the continuation or the intensification of skin lightening. So I've known people or I've seen documentaries where people talked about literally putting bleach on their skin. I've seen people use topical solutions on documentaries. I've seen people have topical solutions or cosmetic procedures through doctors. But I think that this is the first time that I saw people being injected and injecting themselves.
Right. Well, they call that Cinderella treatment or Cinderella drip or.
Well, one nurse had her own name for it, and it was a Cinderella drip, but it was called because I was reading the subtitles, and you were asking me, did they say so and so or so and so? Now I can't even remember what it was, but some chemical that they're putting in their skin. I think it was like a treatment or putting in their body. I think it was initially used as a treatment for something, and then they found this wonderful side effect where it lightens your skin, and so it's just kind of taken off as
It was some kind of cancer treatment. But what fascinated me, if you'll remember, what fascinates me about the whole issue is, I'm like, how did they pull that off? And I mean white people, how did they pull that off? How do you pull off being the biggest demons on the planet, and then but you're somehow able to convince everybody that you're at the top, and there's something wrong with them, and you're the ones that's all effed up. It's astounding to me. I'm like, how in the world did they manage to pull? How did they do that? That was what I think, more than even the people doing that. I think I peaked, but even more than the people doing that, that underlying issue is what I really found interesting in that context.
And I remember, I think it was you who pointed out to me, like, or in the context of white supremacy, I definitely think that there is a brilliance and like I like the evil genius. Yeah. And when you're like, I remember you saying something to the effect of, I will never believe when somebody says, that white people are dumb. Right. That's absolutely not true. And I think that they are evil geniuses.
Right. Oh, they're brilliant when it comes to creating something to destroy something, creating something to torture someone, creating something that's like negative and hurts the environment, or they are freaking geniuses.
And I think they're geniuses at marketing themselves as the top.
Oh, absolutely.
And selling, their systems of destruction and confusion and bullshit and awfulness, throughout the world. Like, I think that they've just, done a good job just of getting people to buy into something that is ideas that are really crazy and anti-human.
Well, if you'll remember, because I like watching my old commercials and old like clips from old black and white TV shows and stuff. But the one that I watched in particular was talking about the history of television, and again, if you'll remember, I was like, they started their propaganda all the way back there. Like in a using mass media, they started the propaganda war right then with this portrayal of them as because if you look at like old TV shows like the old westerns, Gunsmoke and all that, they're like these salt of the earth people. Yeah, you have the villains, but you have to have a villain to juxtapose against like Marshall Dillon or whoever. But when they show these families, the Ingalls, Little House on the Prairie, and all that, these are the people who are the salt of the earth, and all, but that it was all propaganda, and the whole time that you're watching black people. The other night, I watched a old Charlie Chan movie, and they had I think it was Rochester who was that you might not know who that is,
Mm-mm.
but that he was like Jack Benny's butler on Jack Benny's show, but he had his eyes bucked for the entire show. I'm like, how are you doing that? It's like flexing a freaking muscle.
Mm-hmm.
How do you just and they have everybody else basically acting normally, and they had him running around jumping scared of his shadow and running around, and it was again they started the propaganda like really early. They did it with Jim Crow, and they did it with blackface back in the day and all, but as far as mass media goes, I think that's where they really hit their stride.
Mm.
We're able to do that in television and movies.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, and Hollywood is a international industry,
mm-hmm.
And they pump it out, and people
right
suck it in.
Yeah, international cesspool.
Yeah,
and so you have people in all these different countries, and everybody has learned through propaganda that white is right, or light is white, or right, or the closer you are to white, the better you are, and you see, you see it played out in just about every society.
Mm-hmm. What society don't you see it played out in?
Right.
We're not sure because I haven't seen a lot of them, but It seems like the more I know, the more it seems to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something I noticed when I, started traveling. It's like, it seemed like wherever I went, black people were at the bottom.
Right.
Black people were in the poor neighborhoods. Black people were the untouchables. The darker you were, the lower you were on the hierarchy. I thought it was interesting. I didn't know much about it. That was about the Philippines, right?
The Philippines.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying in the documentary, they were talking about, and I think that's kind of how they framed it at the beginning, talking about the colonialization by Spain,
mm-hmm.
and the use of the religious icons, and the religious icons were white and beautiful, and people aspired to that whiteness and that beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought when you started talking about propaganda, that was kind of one of the things that I thought about. I'm reading now. I have or starting to read and explore just this whole conversation about hoodoo,
mm-hmm.
and one of the underlying themes that, like, one of the reasons why I wanted to study it is because I'm like, well, our spirit. I've said this before, but wait a second. The Haitian Revolution came out of some spiritual work that black people were doing,
mm-hmm.
and then they have demonized, Haiti and voodoo, and that's evil and the devil, and so that's kind of, and it seemed to be like a consistent theme in resistance.
Right.
But I'm sort of surprised to see it so explicitly stated in the literature. I just got about like 10 books, and I think I've like skimmed, 8 of them,
right,
and probably 6 or 7 of them, just skimming and kind of looking at them, mention that connection between resistance and our own belief systems. But I think the conflation is our oppression, our and attachment to the white Christianity.
Right. Well, I told you about that little cartoon that I saw where it showed a woman who was obviously African. It was a cartoon. She is obviously African, and she was paying homage to the ancestors, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people get that messed up and say worship, ancestors, and that's not true. It's just a reverence and respect. But it showed that, and then showed this priest, and the priest was basically saying, you're worshiping the devil and all this, and then it showed the same woman, and she was in front of a statue of Mary, and praying, and had a rosary in her hand, and that priest was standing there, and he was like smiling, like, yes, now that's the way to do it. Now that's what. You and I have had the conversation many times about the fact that anything that's African, there are different countries. I mean, as far as the continent goes, anything that's African, anything that's about our people specifically, that has to do with our people, whether it's religion or the way that we live, or anything.
Our hair, our looks, our food, whatever.
Is always demonized. Mm-hmm. And
it's negative. It's bad.
And they have the nerve to try, and they have the nerve, not try, they say it. They have the nerve to say that they saved us from our heathen ways. Mm-hmm. Get the F out of here. And you got, this is kind of like a side issue, but we were talking about that tequila thing, and her referring to our hair as nappy, and I'm like you. I don't feel like it's a derogatory term, but I know that the way that people use it is derogatory, and the way that she meant it was derogatory.
She definitely seemed right.
So, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Everybody tries to make us ashamed of who we are.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the other side of that is making who they are something to be worshipped, something to be admired, something to be aspired to. And that's what was mentioned in the documentary early on, that a lot of people wanted to, as they embraced Catholicism, Christianity, mm-hmm. they wanted to look like those people. Right. But I just want to look back real quick too, because you're like, no, don't worship the ancestors or your ancestors. But then you turn around or then the other side of it is that this glorification of Mary, if you're Catholic, right. or their ancestors.
Right. That's my point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my point exactly.
Okay.
Is that they do. Have I or have I not said that a lot of the stuff that they do leads me to believe that they know something we don't. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to keep us from knowing it, because basically the same stuff that they try to keep us from doing, mm-hmm. they do it. Mm-hmm. And we had that whole discussion about Mount Rushmore and the fact that they built that on sacred land. Mm-hmm. And that was no freaking accident. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing. But, going back to the subject, you have people aspiring to be, to try to be like them as far as their skin color goes. And
as far as their skin color, as far as their culture,
I'm just saying, I'm specifically talking about the skin whitening, though, mm-hmm. is because you have people literally dying.
Yes.
And I'm like, at best they're getting rashes and stuff because of the mercury.
Right.
But you got people, you have people literally dying trying to look white.
Right. And it's not, I mean, some of them, it must be effective and they're not dying, or effective in the short term. But the thing that was striking to me, I mean, I think dying is shocking.
Right.
And getting that rash under your arm, and then there's all kinds of ugly stuff going on. But the thing that was striking to me is that, so there were two things. One, this point that you make about the connection between consumerism, mm-hmm. And focus on money, and that was like one of the themes in that
right.
thing, that area, that country was very poor, mm-hmm. and that people felt that they would have more opportunities if they were white.
Right, and I said as much.
Right,
mm-hmm.
and so that was one thing. And then, so that connection between money and whiteness, mm-hmm. And I can't remember the other thing, so maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, that's all.
Well, money and whiteness, status. and whiteness, intelligence, being clean, and but I mean, they were saying it. It wasn't like implied; they were just straight up saying, and again, we go back to Malcolm X. Who taught you to hate yourself? What in the world? Shoot, love yourself.
And they had some original images of the people, I guess, or it was just like one image of someone before colonialism, and they look pretty dark. When I think of Filipinos, I knew there was like some, or is it Vietnamese? Now I'm confused.
It was the Filipinos.
Okay.
That the show was specifically about.
And I think of people who are that mix of cultures, but I guess I don't know why I didn't make the connection between colonialism, I knew Spanish was in the mix, and I guess I should have known, Spain was out there colonizing everywhere, so why not there? Yeah, my brain, I need my notepad, because my brain is all over the place. So they were showing some of the original, an image of like blacker people or darker people or, more melanated people. Oh, that was the other thing that was interesting. This isn't what I forgot. But the one drug targets the melanin. And I thought that was really interesting because, not when I was growing up, nobody really talked about melanin. I remember hearing in college, high school about a melanin conference, and I don't even know where that went to now. I never hear anyone talking about it. It used to happen and they study melanin. But so many people now talk about melanin popping and melanin. Right. In the Black American and probably, the African diaspora, that's like a big, like, melanin. And the fact that particular thing specifically targets and kills and hurts your melanin, I was kind of like, that's interesting because that's, the blackness.
I think one of the greatest ironies of the whole thing is that you have people who are literally dying to try to be white. You have people who are lightening themselves up. You have people who are going on social media and they're dark skinned, and they will go in Photoshop and lighten up their images and so on. And I know people personally who have done that. And it is so that you can emulate or get nearer to. Now here's the supreme irony of it: is to emulate a people who hate themselves and want to be us. That's that's crazy.
It's a neat trick, or it's an interesting trick. So did I say that about spending so much of their money on it? Not just
because
that
30%.
That was the thing that I had forgotten. Because I was like 30%. I mean, that's like rent. That's like a lot of money. And I remember when I first saw that piece that the guy did on good hair, and people were talking about spending thousands of dollars on weaves, or $8,000. I think it was like $1,000, and I was just shocked because I was so far out of that ecosystem. When I used to go get my hair done, it would be like $35, and then when I got real fancy, it would be like $100. But like $1,000 just seemed like a whole order of magnitude more.
Right.
But spending a third of your income on, and like, they lighten their face, they lighten their body. It was intense.
And it shows the desperation. And it wasn't lost on me that the woman, at least in the second one, the woman who was doing the documentary and
was white and blonde.
A blonde white woman. And I was just thinking about, she's talking to all these people who are messing up their skin, spending all their money, getting sick, some of them dying and so on, for something that she just rolls out of bed and that's her, and walks out the door in that walks out the door in that society, and she's probably worshipped as a goddess.
She's what a lot of people aspire to. She's our aspiration. She is our queen. Isn't that a song?
Yeah, it's
not my queen, but you know.
Right, I know what you mean. I'm looking right now at Amazon. I'm not going to give the brand name, but this is like a lightning jar for men, and it's a lightning program for men. Has a picture of a black man on the front of it. He's he's not real light, but I'm like, why? Just why? And there's there's like several. There's just like this whole litany or this whole group of whitening systems, and I don't get it. I mean, I know that people do it. I understand that it's because of conditioning, but I still don't get it.
But you've never felt personally any pressure or any had any embarrassment or discomfort with the darkness of your skin. You've never been shamed or made to feel bad or anything about it.
Sure, I have.
But you still just thought that the people were crazy who said it.
Yeah, shoot. I told you about like one of the first girls. I'm calling her a girl because that I had a real relationship with, and she wouldn't take it any further because she said I told you what she said. She says because I was dark skinned and she wanted to be somebody light so that she could have pretty babies. And so at
that point, you just thought she was crazy. You never felt you never.
Yeah. I thought she was. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Really? I'm like, shoot, we're the same tone.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that means that she didn't feel like she was pretty.
Yeah, definitely. You know? I mean, I think a lot of us. I mean, I think that when I remember praying for long straight hair or just long hair, I'd be like, I'd be bargaining with God, before I went to bed, like, please, when I wake up, just, let me have long straight hair, and God, if it can't be straight, just let it be long.
Right.
But I never remember bargaining in terms of skin color, but I do remember being very conscious, probably around the age of 4 or 5, because I remember meeting my play sisters at that time, and we ended up growing up together, and they were light skinned, and and just realizing that they got way more attention than I did. They were like the stars, and I was invisible, and I felt very young that a lot of times I was not visible because of my skin color, and it made me feel bad. And I remember just all my life being conscious of that, and not feeling good about it. But I guess I just felt like I was at such a deficit in terms of attractiveness that I just felt like, well, I'll just go with the hair, like I couldn't ask for everything, but so I never lightened, but I guess I do. I understand on some level the pressure that people feel, and I understand that you feel bad. It's like that you can feel bad about yourself, and that you're surrounded by people who are, even if like I didn't have experiences of people saying directly to me bad things about my skin or about my appearance, but the message was just clear, and they would say bad things about other people, like she just black, and I mean. It wasn't the word; it was the tone. Oh, I peaked. So we both peaked now.
But you know what? Even with all you said, in the context of a system of white supremacy, which is a system, and it's a worldwide, entrenched, orchestrated system. For anyone to come out of it in their right mind is a trick in itself.
And I feel like it's just
a feat. Yeah. I don't. Short of being in a group or a tribe or whatever you want to call it, community that has never come in contact with any white person ever. Short of that, I don't see how anybody can come through this in their, with their, without having some kind of scars on them.
Many scars.
I wanted to make sure I said that a certain way because I don't believe that you can't get through and not be all right, more or less. But I don't believe that you can come out unscathed.
Mm-hmm.
And as miseducated as black people and other peoples are, white people are just as miseducated. But the problem is it's a miseducation that works in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
And so they suck it up.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's working for me.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it's designed to make them feel good, to make them feel superior,
Mm-hmm.
to have them have access to everything. It's designed to make us feel bad, make us feel inferior,
Right.
and have us not have access. And I think in terms of like the hierarchy, now that was one thing that was interesting about watching that piece is
Mm-hmm.
like, you pointed out that the people said, oh, I want to be white like Koreans or whatever they said,
Right.
like Koreans.
That was interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know enough about, Asian culture. So I guess like in the hierarchy, Koreans are considered to be light. But I still, in the whole hierarchy of things, white is at the top and black is at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So they probably are feeling pretty good about themselves because they're not as black as me.
Right.
The ones who, so, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that.
So, it's all right. You have to. I think, at least for our people, at least for me, you have to love yourself, and I reject what they have to offer because what they're offering is like materialism and money, I guess, and different things like that. And they're like, well, if you behave a certain way or if you look like us or whatever, then you can move upward or whatever. Well, I have people who I love and care about and respect and so on. I don't need white approval.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
not buying what you selling. I'm not interested.
Right. And I have to, this is nuanced, but I'm just saying, I don't need your money. And what I mean by that is, I don't need your materialism to define who I am.
Mm.
Shoot, I might want a nice car, but if I want a nice car, I might want a fancy car, but if I want it, it's just because I like that car, but it has no bearing upon what I think of myself
mm-hmm.
and who I am.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if you were to take it away, I'm still Ayapo,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I think once you come to a knowledge of yourself and your people, and you come to a genuine love for yourself and your people, then that's what turns the corner. That's what causes you to turn the corner.
Definitely. And I mean, I think like for me, like I think kind of coming to love from, like for me, it started, I don't know if it started, but I definitely leveled up or went to a new level with love for myself. Mm-hmm. But I actually think that, I was fortunate to be born to the parents that I was born to, and to grow up in the environment that I grew up in, because I feel like there was a lot of affirmation of blackness. There were a lot of excellent black people who were doing well and thriving and smart and articulate and conscious of their blackness and proud of their blackness. And so even though I had my struggles, I think that I had a really strong foundation. Mm-hmm. So I'm really grateful for that. I was going to say something. I think I might be too. I might be having a hard time focusing.
Oh.
at this time of night.
Yeah, this is actually a late night talk. It's what, half past midnight?
Half past midnight? Nah.
What time is it?
11:30.
11:30.
Half past
approaching.
11. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. For me, I just really came to a knowledge of myself and my people.
But it sounds like even as a young person, you weren't. I mean, because I constantly have that question for you. It seems like in terms of color, like you say that when you were growing up, people were like Jackie Kennedy. Somebody
Jane Kennedy
was just like the epitome of beauty. And
right.
You thought that the black dancer
Lola
Falana was like the epitome. So it seemed like you were already sort of, but it seemed like the impression that I got is that some of the people that you grew up around, or some of the people that you knew, some of the men, boys were making different choices and very focused on, the other aesthetic. Right. But you seem to be the exception to the rule.
Yeah, and I don't know how I escaped that, but I'm glad that I did. I don't even really know. For myself, I don't know how I slipped through that crack. I'm just glad that I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
because I always, as a matter of fact, the darker. I told you I won't mention their name because you never know who might still be around. But I won't mention their name. But yeah, when I was in high school with her, I told you she was black as a raven's wing at midnight. Had these big lips, and I was in love. It just dark. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't have me wouldn't have me. She wanted that white boy, chubby, pasty one too. Mm-hmm. There is no justice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but I kind of lost it. Sometimes I have a notepad, a little note thing in front of me, and I write down thoughts, but I don't have anything in front of me.
It's all right. I just thought that was an interesting subject. I thought it was interesting while I was watching it. I was very interested in just the dynamic of how things got to be so topsy-turvy and back assward. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they did it, and it's for us to wake up to it. And I don't want it to be one of those type of things where it's like, oh well, you need to get some self-esteem. How do you do that? Where you just say, well, you gotta. I don't know. Everybody has their own journey. I have my own process. I wish there was a paint by numbers type of way to lead and guide our people out of this quagmire. But everybody has their own journey, and there are some places or some things that might be in common, but just. I think I personally always tie everything to materialism, and the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all evil, and maybe everybody doesn't necessarily love money, but there's something about materialism and money that has captured the minds of just about everybody. Because as you mentioned on that show, everything was about. Well, I can get a better career, and as soon as a person says something about career, it translates to money. Mm-hmm. I can have a better place in society. It translates to money, and everything is about trying to attain a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. But I think you pointed it out to me that if you look at that old white man in the wheelchair who's the owner of these vibrant, healthy, athletic, strong black men who are the players on the team or whatever, but that they've successfully set up a system where we think we need money. They've
Right.
sold us this idea that we need money, and it's a difficult thing to escape. And if you don't have money, you don't eat. If you don't have money, you don't have a place to live. If you don't have money, you don't have clothes to wear.
Right.
If you don't have money, you're considered scummy. If you don't have money, you're considered lazy. If you don't have money, you're considered worthless. There's a whole system in place to encourage us and to, support us and lead us to focusing on money and materialism. Right. And so that's why.
And therein, as they say, it is the rub, because you do need money. If you want like to be able to pay rent or go buy food.
But money is not like money was not invented when people were invented.
Right. I know it's an artificial construct.
Oh, okay.
But in our present reality, you have to have money.
Mm-hmm. And in our present reality, white is better, and white is at the top and black is at the bottom.
Right. But I'm just saying, go to the grocery store and fill up your cart and try to walk out and see what happens. You gotta pay for it, and that's just the reality of it. But my feeling when it comes to that is, as I've said so many times, I may need a car, but I don't need a Lamborghini. Mm-hmm. I need some get me from point A to point B.
And you may not need a car.
I need some place to live, but I don't need a mansion with 22 bathrooms with gold toilets in them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where I need clothes, but I don't need a $10,000 suit
or 200 shirts and 500 pairs of pants and a huge walk-in closet to contain it all.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's where things get distorted, and that's where they get us. Not just us, but just like the people in the Philippines, the people in Korea, every place.
I actually think they got us when they set up the system that they controlled. I think that they set up this money system and they controlled it.
Sure, same thing.
Oh,
that's been my thesis all along. Is that if you have an opponent that you can't beat, right? You can't beat them. Then what you do is you find a way to make it so that they're on your game, they're on your board, they're on your square. And you make all the rules for them to abide by, where at the same time that you don't have to abide by the rules, by any rules. And then that way it's impossible to beat, to beat them. And that's what happened. Just like you said, they set this system up because it is a system that they can control. And moreover, it's a system that not only they can control, but they're able to lock other people out of it. And you take it even a step further, you're able to lock people out of it and then convince them that they want to be in there, that they need to be in there. At the same time, you keep them locked out so that they keep fighting to get in, as opposed to at some point saying, why am I trying to get in there?
Right.
And walking off and going and minding your own business.
Right.
So that's been my whole thought process. One day I need to just really write it out, because that's what I feel happened.
Yeah. So one thing, this is back to colorism and how to dealing with it. Now, I don't know if we're talking about colorism or skin bleaching, but for me, it's kind of mixed up.
Right.
But one of the things I do is when I see little girls, I always try to say to little girls and to girl babies, you're so smart and alert. Because there's this idea that girls are supposed to be pretty and boys are supposed to be smart or whatever. So I always try to say to little girl babies, oh my gosh, she's so smart. If I can say that honestly, look at how alert she is. And then to little dark-skinned babies, girls, I always have to add, oh, you're so pretty.
Right.
Because I feel like they're probably not going to hear that very much in their life. although we were listening to the Ugly Girls Club, and I have some theories. I've been very.
I wasn't listening to it. I was overhearing it.
Yeah,
I wasn't listening to it.
I've listened to it periodically, probably for about a year to her channel. And she does these it seems like the segments are usually like an hour and a half. I don't know if I've ever listened to a whole segment. And I first discovered this woman. I can't remember her name, but I would watch her artwork on Facebook, and she would do like these videos where you could see stuff, like time lapse videos of her artwork. And I kind of like her work. The people have big eyes. I kind of like her work. So anyway, but I don't know how important this concept or how important it is to be beautiful. And so I think that's another, like richness and beauty. Like I think these ideas, yeah. I mean,
and as cliche as it is, beauty truly is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, that's not cliche at all.
So.
And I think that, and I actually think that, when you're talking about, like, I feel like in the real world, like when you're like, I think that beauty is in the eye of the beholder because everybody has a spirit and everybody has like a unique spirit. And I think that you can see something in people's spirit and really be attracted to it and connect with it. And that's beautiful. And their soul is beautiful and their ideas and their, I think, the way they move in the world can be, there are all kinds of things about people, their work ethic, their mind, their artwork. There are all kinds of things that make people beautiful, that I feel like have nothing to do with how someone looks.
Right. I agree.
And, also like, and it's subjective, it's cultural. It's, at different times in history, different things are considered attractive. But so I don't know in terms of addressing, this issue of getting free from ideas that would make us think that, bleaching our skin or using chemicals or investing a bunch of money in something like that is, worth it and, a viable pursuit. And that, even at risk of death or, being maimed or injured or that we should pursue that anyway.
But you know what you just made me think about is if you have to do something unnatural to yourself, then you probably don't need to be doing it. It's like the discussion that we have had about about just people like mowing their lawns or spraying pesticides on or weed killers or whatever on asphalt or whatever, and for as much as people will weed whack, no matter how much they put weed killer on the asphalt, everything. The grass and the dandelions keep pushing up.
Well, they're not trying to get rid of the grass. They're trying to get rid of the...
Well, but they cut it so it looks a certain way. So they have to keep doing it. It doesn't just grow, wild and natural the way it's supposed to. And even as you watch moss grow up, on the side of buildings or plants that start clinging to buildings and growing up. And if people abandon a building or a factory or whatever, then the plants start taking over, and that's because it's because it's natural, and you have to keep fighting against that nature because on the thing about skin whitening, they're getting these treatments every month. So it has to be maintained.
And that was one of the questions in the thing. So once you get your skin to, the right lightness, do you just, stop? And they're like, oh no. Do you remember that? They like, you got to keep it up.
Right. And so if that's the case, if you're doing something like that, it shows that it's not natural and you probably shouldn't be doing it. And I kind of, in its way, that's profound.
And I think it's the same thing like with perming your hair. You have to, your hair keeps, you keep laying it down, it keep growing, you keep laying it down, it keep growing. It just keep fighting. You try to lay it down, it just come out fighting.
Why are you fighting your hair? Why are you fighting your? And that's coming from somebody who shaves. I just shaved today, but men shave and so, but that hair keeps coming back. Which mine keeps coming back, but it won't come back on top. Doggone it! What's up with that?
I don't know, baby.
That George Jefferson look. But anyway.
And I think that's part of acceptance too, because we've talked about that. I'm like,
right. And
so
I'm not gonna spray some black crap on all my spray stuff on my head to make it look like I have hair or whatever. Because 9 times out of 10, when you're using something that is not natural or chemically based or what, your body reacts to that crap.
Because your body is naturally producing melanin. So why are you putting chemicals in there to kill it? It's anti-nature, it's anti-life, it's anti...
Right. So
it's anti-you.
You get these cells and they start saying, "Oh, this is an invader." Next thing you know, you're getting like some form of cancer, fooling around trying to look like something that you're not, as opposed to looking in the mirror and loving yourself. And
I do think that it sounds hokey, but I'm a fan of mirror work. When you talk about, well, how do you just come to love yourself? How do you? I'm a fan of actually looking in the mirror at yourself, and looking in the mirror and saying positive things to yourself, finding the things about yourself that you can appreciate and the things that you love, and big upping those and celebrating those and searching for more and more things about yourself that you love.
And eventually that spreads out to your people. Because that's how I learned to love my people, was I learned to love myself first. And appreciate myself. And then I started appreciating my people and seeing genuinely how brilliant and artistic and ingenious and industrious our people are, and resilient,
and just fabulous, and did you say creative and funny and clever,
right? And there's just a way that we move in the world,
dynamic, yes.
And for a people who has been so oppressed and continues to be, we move in a way that I believe we move in a way that stupefies white people. They can't understand it, because they'd be like, if that was us, we'd be committing suicide in droves. But you still smile, you still laugh, you still procreate, you still are there. And so, anyway, that's about all I have to say.
That's about all I have to say too, I think.
Okay, well, as always, I enjoy every conversation. Oh, go ahead.
But I do kind of feel like I feel like I'm a little too distracted, but I wish that we had left more. We did talk about loving yourself, or the other side of, I feel like there's always two sides to a topic. So, there is the side of people bleaching their skin, but where's the side where we're talking about how you can get free from that stuff? And we did talk about it a little bit. I think we
discussed that, so.
Yeah, I think we did too.
Because that's why we have these conversations on how to get off this plantation. Because the plantation is not only physical, but it's psychological.
Right, and I think the psychological one is the main one.
Right.
Free your mind and your arse will follow.
Right. So that's all I got. It's late. What is it? Midnight yet?
Nope. It's 8 minutes till midnight.
Okay, so we finished before Friday, and so I'll finish editing. But that's about it. I want to thank you, or we want to thank you,
yes,
for taking the time to listen. And we always thank you for your comments and comments, listening and
listen.
And so that's about it. And as always, we wish you peace and blessings, sanity, safety, and security through separation. And until next week at this same time, we will see you on the run.
Run, 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 run.
What?
Run, run. It's my creative.
You know how it is when it gets late and you start like getting
they
like
say punchy.
Punchy.
Silly.
Yeah. So it's not late enough for me to start getting punchy yet. I get punchy around 3 or 4 o'clock.
That's the creative. That's like Baba Ibn. I'm calling your name Baba. But that's the, when you do a poetry thing, you say, I'm going to the store. I want some more of those Oreos. See? That's poetry and creativity.
We have told it.
And you should have been riffing with me.
Huh?
You should.
Yeah.
I was trying to riff with you.
Yeah, no. I love you, sweetie. All right. We already told we would see him on the run. So we'll see you on the run.
Peace.
And thank you again for listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOEAIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.